All right, well, thank you everybody for joining this breakout session. We're going to have a bit of fireside chat with Rachel, who's with Twilio Segment, as was introduced. Just want to say a big thank you to our partners at Segment for joining us at Think Summit this year and for sponsoring our event. Before we get too far into it, Rachel, maybe you could provide a bit of an introduction to yourself and your role at Segment.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here. So as you guys just heard, I work at Segment. I'm a product manager. I focus specifically in the Segment app on analytics. So how do we take all of the data, all of the emails you send, all of the push notifications, all of the advertising data, and bring that into one platform and really show you insights and how to leverage that data for other campaigns. So that's really what I focus on at Segment. I've been there for about a year. And prior to Segment, I actually was a Segment customer. So I've been around and been also in the marketer's shoes before. So it's good to be here.
That's excellent. As Betty mentioned, I lead the global partnerships team here at Movable Inc. So I get the privilege of working with great partners like Segment as we think about connecting our technology with the amazing technology that many of you are working with day in and out. We also have an amazing network of solution providers that are driving service and strategy into our platform. So you'll find a lot of those companies out in the main room, but we're very much appreciative for our partner ecosystem for the continued contributions they provide to Movable Inc. Just maybe by a quick show of hands, how many is familiar with Segment or CDP? Is this something kind of on your mind, something that the organizations are thinking about? Excellent. Yeah, I think definitely as you think about the landscape that we're in, everybody's thinking through CDPs. And so I guess, Rachel, I'd love to hear just a little bit about, tell us a little bit about Segment. How do you guys differentiate yourselves and what makes Segment so great?
Yeah, absolutely. So at its core, Segment is a CDP. It's been the leading CDP for years. And what a CDP really is the ability to bring in data from many disparate sources. So think about users on your website, users interacting with an ad on Facebook, users in an app, users who are interacting with your customer service agents. So any single data point that you have about your customers, really at the core of Segment is it brings all of that disparate data together into one tool, performs identity resolution across those customers, right? One customer might have given you an email on one platform, a phone number somewhere else. We want to make sure that that's one profile. We take that data, bring it together, build what we call a golden profile, which we'll get more into, but really a profile about each one of your customers, and then take that data and activate it downstream. So activate it in a tool like Movable Inc., activate it in a Facebook ad, really activate it anywhere you want. And in addition, send that raw data down to your data warehouses for other folks to use as well. And so I think that's really what the core of Segment does. It's like you have so many different touch points that all of your customers are interacting with. How do you bring that together, perform identity resolution, make sure the data is clean, handle privacy, security, and then activate that data wherever you want to, wherever your customer is best suited to get that marketing communication.
It's great. I already have tons of follow-up questions that we'll get into based on some of those components. I guess maybe just to set the stage, obviously there's a number of other CDPs in the space. What makes Segment great? How do you really stand out? Where do you excel with your customers?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton. But I would think of maybe 3 areas where we really accelerate. I think one is, we've been around a long time. The number of data connections and the ease of getting your data in, I would say, is the first. If we don't have an out-of-the-box connection for you, we have tooling to really easily build that data source into Segment to then bring it into that golden profile. I would say the second is identity resolution. So we have very sophisticated identity resolution graphs. You can have your main, I don't want to get too technical, but some people think email is their core identity resolution, or user ID, or phone number, or anonymous ID, right? There's so many different ways that people track their customers in different channels, and our identity resolution system is really first in class. And I would say the third is real time. People talk about real time a lot, but what does that actually mean? And I think on a Segment side, you can look in our UI and see your data actually flowing in the second that you interact on your website or your app. A lot of other CDPs out there, they run on schedule. So update every 12 hours, update every 24 hours. And there's tons of use cases that works for, but there's tons of use cases where you really want it to be real time. Let's say this morning I was shopping on Amazon, and I added something to my cart, but the data updated as of yesterday, and I get an ad. I don't get that add to cart email with the relevant information that happened 20 minutes ago. I think other use cases have to do with customer support. There's tons of real-time use cases, and that's where Segment really excels. So I think it's really those 3 things. It's the amount of connections, the identity resolution, and then the real-time nature of our platform.
Yeah, I think on the real-time side, we can all relate to that, right? Having our own experiences as consumers where we take an action, but the messaging doesn't quite align. And so I can see why that's so critical in getting that right, because it does have an opportunity to really stand out when it's done well. Rachel, you mentioned the idea of a golden profile. Sounds great. Could you tell us a little bit more? What does that mean, and are marketers really able to achieve that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this whole idea of like unlocking the profile, I think, is a big theme for Segment in this year. And what that really means is a lot of what we saw earlier in some of the keynote conversations. Every user is going to interact differently, and every user wants different products, maybe converts with different content. And the only way to understand that is to have data at the profile level and to create what we call this golden profile. So, I just found out Kyle lives in Indianapolis, I live in New York. Maybe if we're shopping at a running store, there's different types of things that we would need based on that location. And so having that location on your profile, sending that to a downstream tool to then use the right content for the right person. And so we actually just launched a product called Unify, which not only allows you to take that profile and use it in other tools, it allows you to actually explore the profile within the Segment UI as well. So I can search and say, hey, I want to do something specific for people who live in New York, who attended the Think Summit. Let me make some specific content for them. And so we've really trying to create ways to unlock that profile in downstream tools within the Segment UI in your data warehouse. And that profile also is the basis for a lot of this AI stuff that we're talking about, right? Like how to know the right time to send something to someone. It's based on the previous emails they got and what time did they open, click, and convert to that email. So all of these machine learning models are really built on top of what we call the golden profile.
Okay, so as we think about creating this golden profile, obviously kind of the title for our session, we're doing this in a world where we want recession-proof strategies. So what are some of the ways marketers in the room should maybe think about working with a platform like Segment, accomplish their goals of a golden profile, but also doing so efficiently and smartly?
Yeah, so I guess the theme of a lot of this session is everyone's being asked to do more with less. And so I think really similarly to what we heard this morning, it's how do we enable a marketer to do this on their own without engineering resources, right? There's a ton of hey, I want to launch this campaign, but I'm missing this data point, or I don't have the add to cart event in my CDP or in my tool to actually do this type of campaign that I want to run. I think what's really great about Segment is it unlocks marketers to do that on their own. So we have reverse ETL, get your data directly from your warehouse, and the UI is so simple that you can just select the exact data points you want, and now it's all of a sudden streaming real time into your systems. And so I think really when we think about doing more with less, it's how do you take more onus and just not have to rely on engineering resources or getting prioritization for the next sprint. Really what Segment can do is unlock for the marketer directly those types of tools with the data. It's basically data at your fingertips and use it how you want to. With tools like Movable Ink, we actually have activation directly in Segment as well, where you can send emails and SMS and build journeys within our tooling. And so I think really the theme is, we've started to pivot Segment to be more self-service and less focused as a CDP data analyst tool. Let's get marketers in our tool and start building these campaigns themselves, because the marketers are the ones with the brains, right? You guys are the ones that say, hey, here's the requirements for this campaign. Often engineers or data analysts have to help you to get those data points. Now with those data points available, you kind of own your destiny, right? Take initiatives, think about the use cases that are really going to move the needle for your business, figure out where those data points are, and then go end to end and implement those use cases.
Yeah, I mean, just as a plug, I think as partners of Movable Ink, we definitely see this. I think that's why our integration with Segment is one of the most highly requested and highly inquired about solutions we work with, just because of the power of putting this at the fingertips of the marketer. Rachel, you've mentioned in a couple of your answers talks about the ability to activate on the data, destinations, reverse ETL, and the strength of the platform in all the ways in which you can use the data. Can you just talk a little bit more about why that's so key for the platform, having these places to send the data and activate it, and what that really empowers for the marketer?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just empowers these personalized use cases, right? And personalization, I know, is something that has been talked about all day. I think I saw some stat somewhere where it's like 50% of consumers will not, make a second purchase if their experience is not personalized. That obviously applies to e-commerce, but I think we can see the same thing in other brands. Imagine like, maybe you bank at Chase and you get an email that says, hey, you spent $1,000 this month, but you spent $100. It's like, you'd be like, what? Like, what's happening, right? And so I think there's this idea of trust that comes with personalization and really feeling a part of the brand. So Kyle and I were talking, a couple of weeks ago about like Peloton. Peloton's actually one of my favorite brands. I think their marketing is extremely personalized. Their goal is to get me to work out more often, and they do. Their marketing gives me, what's my streak this week? How many miles have I rode? Like really personalized stuff that makes me feel like, hey, they actually care about me. I know how it works. I know that there's not one person who's hired to just send me marketing emails, but tools like Segment and Movable Inc. make it feel like, oh, they've hired a person to literally send Rachel marketing emails about exactly what she did on Peloton this week. And that's empowered by my golden profile that says what I did, how many miles I rode, how many weeks in a row, combined with a tool like Movable Inc., which can then generate that custom content. And so I think that's really where like the partnership between these brands and how marketers can really use this to feel like, hey, each individual person almost has their own marketer who's thinking about them. And that's the feeling that I think brands should start giving to customers, and that's the feeling that a lot of consumers expect nowadays. And so I think between these two tools, like that's really, like that goal can be achieved.
Yeah, in our prep, Rachel and I were just talking about our love of Peloton. We were this close to just doing this whole chat on bikes up here, but just missed the timing to get those delivered for us. I want to maybe take a step back to those that maybe are new to CDPs, have not even gotten started yet. It's maybe something that is a goal for this year. Where do we get started? What's kind of an easy path forward, and how do we really begin to move down a journey to achieve some of these things that you've just spoken about?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it can be overwhelming, right? You think about all of the use cases you have, and I've touched on a few, but it can feel like, oh my God, I need to bring in 100 different data sources and 100 different data points. And so a lot of the recommendation that I give to folks who are thinking about moving on to a CDP is focus on one or two use cases. Focus on things that you really think are going to move the needle. Maybe an example is a promotional email you want to send out, but it hasn't really been performing well, and you think, hey, if I personalize this based on a customer's age or a customer's location, I really think we can move the needle here. Right now, our conversion's 5%. My goal is 10%. And just think about the 5 data points you need for that email, and just build towards that use case. So my suggestion really is start small. See the difference, do a proof of concept, see the difference in terms of where the personalization is helping, and then add on more use cases. I think it's really hard, or often hard in this economy, to justify like, hey, we're going to sign a contract for 2 years that's going to be $100,000 a year. It's like, just start small. Start with a $20,000 contract, do a POC. I guarantee you, I know at Segment, I know at Movable Inc., if you start small, you can expand that contract over time, and no one's going to be upset about that. And so I think it's really, my advice would be, focus on 1 or 2 use cases that you really think are going to move the needle. Find those 5 data points, work with your engineering team, get those data points in, show the benefit and the lift, and then it becomes much easier to realize, hey, this spend on these marketing platforms is actually returning us much higher than the cost. And so that's really where I would kind of focus the efforts.
I love that. As we go down this journey, maybe we've started small, we're starting to do a little bit more. Are there any common mistakes that you see, or places where maybe people get a bit off track, and you just, some best practices as they think about rolling this out? If the golden profile and kind of fully leveraging that in all campaigns is at the destination, what are some maybe the other best practices along the way?
Yeah, I would say that the big one is trying to solve kind of every single use case at once. I think where I would really, suggest folks, like I mentioned, is starting with those 1 to 2 use cases. I think where I see people go wrong is not necessarily thinking about my data quality and just worrying about, hey, I just need to get something in here to get something out, but bad data in is bad data out. And so I think the other area I see people go wrong is maybe they cut corners in terms of getting the right data into their platform, or they get incomplete data. So the other area I would focus on is make sure that the data sources you have, or wherever you're getting the data from, is the true source of data. And I think it's hard in the world today, right? We have different data warehouses for different things. We have people are using Salesforce for this, and Snowflake for this. And so it's make a decision as a business about where is the true source of data, use that data to get into Segment, and so you have the real clean source of data to then send downstream. Because I think one of the worst scenarios here is you take a use case like add to cart, you spend all this time implementing it, and then you realize like, hey, this event data is actually coming from the wrong place. And so I think doing most of your work in terms of the prep and getting the right data in, and then what's amazing about tools like Segment and Movable Inc. is that it then basically does the work for you, right? You set up a few things, put a few content blocks in, and now your email is going out. You can analyze it, send time optimization, start using the AI to generate content. I think there's so much you can do from there, but it's getting that foundational data correct that we see a lot of people kind of make mistakes on.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing through all that is really to have the right plan in place. If you know where you're going, what you're wanting to accomplish, making sure you spend a bit of extra time to set it up correctly to really achieve the outcomes that you want to, which makes a lot of sense. I think sometimes we do rush into things a bit excited about the potential without having the solid plan in place, and that little bit of extra prep that goes into it will help ultimately drive the stronger outcomes. Obviously, we're here at Think Summit, which is hosted by Movable Inc. Just curious, kind of your thoughts on what makes our partnership together so strong, and kind of the benefit of the two platforms together.
Yeah, I mean, I think you saw it this morning in the AI presentation. Think about all of the data that's needed to create that, LTV model, or the data that's needed to create like what content somebody is driving. That all can be easily powered by Segment, and is for a lot of our joint customers. And so I think there just is such a strong partnership. The models, Segment is kind of at its core, like I mentioned, the ability to bring data from many sources into one tool, and then activate that data. And so we might be the tool that's bringing that data together, but that activation is happening in Movable Inc. And so it's really the combination of these tools with like very robust, rich content creation, and tools to actually send to your customers, but you need that data to do the personalization. You need that data to build the AI. And so I think using things like the AI in Movable Inc., there's also AI in Segment, obviously. Everyone today is doing AI in some form. So taking those predictive traits that you might have in Segment that's predicting someone's likelihood to convert, taking that, putting it to Movable Inc. and saying, okay, well, their likelihood to convert to this product is really high, and this product's really low, so let's use the right content for the right user. And so it's really like a combination, right? You can have the best data in the world. If you don't have a tool to activate it, you're not going to do anything with that data. You could have an amazing tool to activate, but if you don't have the data, you don't know who to send to, what to send to, when to send to. And so it's really the combination of those things that really powers kind of that marketer story.
Yeah, I think as our two products continue to innovate and evolve, there will only be more opportunities for them to connect together, especially with all the advancements in AI, both on the Movable Inc. side and what we're already seeing from Twilio. So only excited for what the future potential is there. I guess just in kind of wrapping up for today, I would encourage you, if you have more questions about our friends at Twilio and Segment, what they're doing, how that might apply to your business. They do have a booth out in the expo hall or in the main hall there. Please feel free to stop by, ask those questions, chat with the team. I'm sure they'd love to tell you more about how their technology could drive positive impact to your organization. And so with that, please join me in giving a round of applause to Rachel, and thanks for this time.